This is Talking My Walking. I am Rodrigo Ribeiro, just another voice in the wilderness. Today I'm going to talk about human agency, the pursuit of self interest, and propaganda. Human agency, the ability to use our potential in a conscious way. So, human agency is related to consciousness. It's when we and when our choices, our preferences, our beliefs, our assumptions are the consequence of a conscious process of a reflective process that allows us to base our choices and decisions um, as most as possible in facts, not in whatever. So this is human agency, okay? Whether political, economic, socioeconomic, sociocultural, or in other aspects, such as which religion we profess, or none at all, or it doesn't matter, whatever it is. So then comes the pursuit of self-interest. What is the pursuit of self-interest? The pursuit of self-interest cannot be dissociated, as I frequently state, because it is I make an emphasis in that, because that is absolutely is essential, is crucial, which is the understanding of whatever it is as processes, systems, and relations. If we do not understand ourselves and how we interact with the reality, how we relate with others, and how we comprehend, not only interact but comprehend reality as processes, systems, and relations, we don't get it. We just don't get it. So the pursuit of self-interest is always in is the this it seems to be part of the human agency, and it is part of the human agency, but it is not only um, a process where conscious choice and conscious decision making is free of influence. That influence comes from the socio-economic system and the socio-cultural, political, and ideological system where we live. And by ideological and cultural, I mean the dominant ideologies, the dominant political system, and the dominant political economy. Okay, so we have these things that are we are colonized, and again I have to go to the idea of instrumentalization. we cannot escape it. We cannot escape indoctrination. We cannot escape instrumentalization. The point is, what kind of instrumentalization? Are we instrumentalized through a culture of true liberation, a culture that helps us to detect lies, logical fallacies, uh, how language framing works, how demagoguery works, how propaganda works, or are we um, educated? Okay. Are we indoctrinated and instrumentalized to be tools of a system and processes and relations that in the end we become useful idiots, cannon fodder, and expendable peons or disposable peons um, to uh, to serve a system that is against us, that is not it was not designed and was not changed. Okay, because things are always, that's why we need to understand things as systems and processes. There is always mutations going on. Those mutations are induced by whom? Who has the power to induce the right mutations? Through law, through the use of the state violence, through the pre-selection of the politicians that are subjected to elections. But in the end, it doesn't matter, because in the main issues, which has to do with the economy and the political system, they don't change. They just use the cultural and ideological tools they have and the mediums they have in order to indoctrinate and instrumentalize us to perceive that reality as the only reality, as the as the system, as Tina. Okay, there is no alternative, and our human agency, which means the power to the free choice, the process of decision making is conditioned by these parameters that exist inside our brains, neuronal networks, as they exist in our subconscious. They are the maps that we use, the routes, the functional narratives, the identity narratives, the sociocultural identity narratives through which we perceive reality and through which we exercise the so-called pursuit of self-interest, that we think it's the only way to operate. And we are right to a certain extent, because within the existing system, we have no choice. We have a choice to be pariahs. That's the choice. But if you want to have some sort, to have some sort of success, of social acceptance and recognition and a career, you need to comply. You even refuse or deny yourself the right to think in an analytical way about these issues. That's what we do. And what's the role of propaganda? Through repetition and mimicry, the repetition of certain memes and slogans and dogmas, and also through uh, the use of taboos, the issues that exactly are avoided. Why the propaganda is the machinery, is the intellectual and the psychological, psychoaffective um, machinery, tools, apparatus that are used to shape, to manipulate perception, to shape our perception in order to manufacture consent. While we have, at the same time, we have this, we still believe that we are using our human agency, that we are being critical thinkers, and we have we use our skeptical abilities. But those critical, the critical skills that we apply are also framed. They are using pre prejudices, okay, preconcepts. You know, they go through a frame that we believe is ours, but in fact it has been part of the instrumentalization process, which is a continuous process. That's why it is a process and is part of a system that we are in relation with in a daily basis, day in, day out, 24/7, even in our dreams. And if we do not get this right, how can we? I mean, it is useless to talk about freedom. Freedom is an empty slogan. That's nothing to do with our mental, with our mental reality, with our psychocognitive reality. Because the point is that we do not. I'm sorry to say, but I think most of us do not really get properly a proper a proper understanding of the socio cultural condition, nature of the human condition. We don't learn it at schools, and most of the theories and this that exist, they are distorted. I mean, I'm not even saying that it's on purpose, but it's already because it's everything is done through a frame, through certain lenses. That's how we work as a species. That's by default. Okay? That's why it matters a lot what kind of frame. It's not just that because we know that the scientific method and this and that, if you apply the scientific method, we can be closer to the truth. That is true. That is better to use the scientific method. That's true. But we need to understand that even the scientific method is based on prejudices. Human beings don't, and this is crucial to understand these points. Human beings do not, if I get rid of some prejudices, I will buy into other prejudices. That's why I emphasize this point, that we need to understand ourselves as domesticated animals that we cannot say, if I say that I don't have prejudice, I'm being stupid. Of course I have prejudices. Of course I have a bias. Of course, uh, I I I am I fall for a certain indoctrination of or a compound of indoctrinations. Of course I'm instrumentalized. Okay? The point is, I need to know that I am, and I need to have an analysis to know what are the values, what are the principles, what is the ethics and the aesthetics of my biases. What do I want as a human being? What are my existential goals? What do I want to what kind of relations do I want to build with others and with nature? What do I think it's the purpose of life? But not as a chimera, not as something that I'm, just like something, those ideas. No, as a true organic human being with flesh and bones and blood. That blood that is irrigating now my brain cells and allow me to think, to reflect on these issues. That's why I cannot think about spirituality that is not related to nature. That I don't understand life, my life, my humanity without in in a, without having the conscious perception that my humanity is part of the web of life. As the same goes to culture. Any culture that doesn't understand that culture doesn't exist versus nature, culture needs to be part of the web of nature, needs to grow from there, not in separation, not as a division, not this dualistic view of spirituality that people have, that is spirit in one side and flesh in another side. As if flesh is some kind of second nature, is not good enough to be spirit. What am I now? What am I doing? I must trying to be a spiritual being through my flesh, my organic life, my biological life, or is something superior that is controlling my mind and my super ego or whatever people want to make out of these things, instead of recognizing my true nature, instead not only recognizing but understanding, but have an holistic understanding of our socio-cultural, of the sociocultural nature of our human condition. So we cannot understand human agency um, without understanding that um, anything about us humans can be weaponized and instrumentalized. Usually, instrumentalization goes through the weaponization. That's how propaganda works, through the weaponization of values, concepts, principles, ideas, framed in ways to serve a purpose. And if that purpose is not the collective well being, okay, if the purpose is not the collective well being, then what it is? You know, propaganda to um, to legitimize the war, for example. Usually, that propaganda starts to create an enemy. I mean, there are wars that are justified, okay, because there are wars that that unfortunately cannot be avoided. Okay, that is true. But most wars are part of an agenda, usually for societies that are in a process of deterioration, of becoming irrelevant, and the plutocrats and oligarchs, and that means the elites of those societies, those countries, or those um, or a collection of countries, uh, a multinational or transnational organization, needs war as an escape, as a way to fix problems that usually have to do with class war. Because when a society is in decline, when a country, for whatever reasons, is in decline, usually the wealthy classes, the oligarchs and plutocrats of that society, of that country, or a group of countries, it would require to have um, a reconfiguration of power, which means that it would require a more asymmetric distribution of power and wealth in the society. And because they don't want to do that, because they don't want to give up their privileges, their status, they don't want real democracy, they don't want nor they don't want political democracy, nor economic democracy, nor any other form of democracy. That's the last thing any oligarch or plutocrat wants. That's why we don't have democracy. We have managed democracies. That we call it representative democracy or parliamentarian democracy or whatever. So these classes fabricate an enemy, fabricate a threat that can be communism. Now in Europe, the threat is Russia, And they use that fabrication to um, to to make to transform the economy into an economy of war, to militarize society, and to prepare mentally to colonize, to through fear mongering, to um, to colonize the minds of people of the need to prepare for war against the threat. And they use these lies or these half truths in order to prepare a nation for a war totally unnecessary, a war that that in the case of the Russian, a war between Europe and the European Union or NATO or whatever, or Germany and France and England and whoever against Russia, could end up with the obliteration of the whole Europe. Okay? And what was the purpose of it? Nothing. I mean, nothing is not correct. If we would be able to boil it down, we would see that it was only about the strategy of a ruling class that don't have a project for their own countries, an inclusive project, a project for economic development, cooperation, and I mean by economic development, I don't mean just consuming more. I mean to have good life, for people to have a good life, to have safety, to have social, universal, basic services for free, to have access to affordable housing as a human right, and other things that were supposed to be part of the social democracy ideal, which was, you have to understand that social democracy was the capitalist solution to avoid communism, to neutralize, not to avoid, let's put it in a better way, to neutralize communists and socialists in the Western countries, especially in Europe. So social democracy is now dead. Basically, social democracy is dead. That's why we have these ideas about the pursuit of self-interest, the primacy of the pursuit of self-interest. There is no such thing as society, and the collective well-being doesn't matter. What matters is just that each one of us, in the pursuit of our self-interest, we will end up with the well-being of all. Okay, so this is how the ideas are fabricated, the concepts are manipulated to manufacture consent. Threats are created and transformed into dogmas, into truths that are not supposed to be challenged. As we all know, we cannot, it's almost most people in Europe that dares to have a different idea, that want to end the war, that want cooperation with Russia, are demonized. You know, the people are losing the access to their banking accounts. Individuals, because of their opinions, their political opinions. So we need to. I mean, this needs to be really. I mean, we every single citizen, every single individual and human being needs to really go through this. I mean, we cannot have this understanding of human agency just because we can go, if we have money in our pockets, and pick from Pepsi or Coca-Cola, a Coke, Pepsi or Coke, or I mean, whatever it is that you can buy in the supermarket, or if you have the money to do it, because human agency is not about that. It doesn't mean that you should not have the right to exercise those kinds of choices. Of course, we have our particular tastes and things like that, and in idiosyncrasies and whatever it is, and that's fine. The problem, human agency, at the political, at the socio-cultural, political level, is a different thing. You know, we need to understand how deep manipulated we are. That our agency cannot, the human agency, as well as the pursuit of the self-interest, cannot be, do not exist outside of the reality of the socioeconomic and sociocultural, ideological, and political reality, which these two, they reinforce each other. And we have these maps in our minds, in our subconscious minds, that are the ones that give us directions. Okay? It's not the directions. This point is very important to understand. Our choices, our lines of thoughts, of our discernment doesn't come from, doesn't come out of the blue. It has routes, it has roots, it has frames. It is influenced, it is shaped by the dominant narratives that are colonizing our minds. And we need to understand that, and we need to deal with it as part of what I used to call a process, a transformative conscious process, because a critical analysis, critical thinking skills that are innate need to be trained, and to have methods, and we need to find the right tools, the right intellectual and cognitive tools, and effective techniques, But most of what we find, the people telling you how you can achieve spiritual sovereignty, and this is BS. Most of it, unfortunately. Not everything is BS, but it, because it's not about giving solutions. It's about saying what you have to do to think by yourself, to do that process through the understanding, starting with the basics, which is to understand how language framing, to understand cognitive linguistics, cognitive dissonance, to understand how logical fallacies work to manipulate our thoughts and our perception, and rhetoric, demagoguery, because that's how we can acquire some human agency, which is always as a process, as a process, as a relation between us and reality. We are in a permanent relation. This is not some. We are a living organism. We are not a thing. We are not a computer. I mean, never accept that people tell that your brain is like a computer. It is not. It is a living organism that needs to take care of the homeostatic processes to keep them compatible with life. And it's running a living. Our brain is running a living organism, but we also can recognize patterns, and we have all this. So it's that's why, if they can manipulate how we, if the powers that be can manipulate how we recognize patterns, how we identify them as threats, or as this, or as that, they can manipulate our will. They can manipulate our choices, our decisions, our thought processes, because it's already the thought processes that are poisoned. It's not outside, it's inside us. And I mean, I've been working on this probably all my life, and most of it without knowing what I was doing. I was just exposed to things, and my head would go, nah, this is not the way it works. I could not explain it. Now, for some time, I start to put the dots together, to connect the dots. And I think I'm in the right track. I am no authority in anything. I don't pretend to be, but I am a human being. I think I can understand because it's mostly about our interest. What kind of intellectual curiosity do you have? And also, as António Aleixo, a Portuguese poet, a peasant, okay, not an academic, he used to say that the difficult times, the difficulties of life, teach us philosophical lessons. Exactly. Life has taught me a lot of philosophical lessons, and still does in a daily basis. We just need to pay attention, to be focused, to understand that what is happening with us while we are exposed to the messages, to the narratives, what's going on in our brains. why it matters to understand what's being exposed to the socio-cultural environment. What happens with our brains, with our subconscious mind, when we expose ourselves to movies, also to books. Because again, people say, oh, literacy, that if we only can be free if we read, the more we read, the better. That's BS. That's not the point. The point is that you know what's going on in your own brain, behind the scenes, which means that you have to work as a conscious being in understanding you as a subconscious being. Okay? That's a very important point. I think in that note, I'm going to end this this monologue. I truly, I mean, I would like that someone somewhere would appreciate my words, not because of me, not because I want. I mean, it's just because it's the best of my of me trying as hard as possible to be intellectually honest and morally just, and to understand our species through me, through myself, and through my observations of the world and other people. And this goes through, as I said, the understanding of processes, systems, and relations. Okay. Thank you for listening. I will be back soon.